All right, welcome back to the podcast. We've got Paul Cobo, Vice President of Operations for Turtle Infrastructure. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, good to have you. Or
Thanks.
Good to be here, I should say.
Yeah, appreciate it. You have a very interesting background, which is why we wanted to have you come in. Not only is Turtle a very well-respected company in road construction here in Florida, but you don't get the opportunity very often to talk to somebody who flies Black Hawk helicopters. So that's part of why we wanted to have you come in. And I'd love to hear some of your military background, because I'm sure that there's a lot of carryover from military into helping run Turtle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one job and another job, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover. I mean, a lot of the skill sets that I've learned from the whole military life, and not only just flying helicopters, just operations within the military and how, and managing that from a coordination and operational standpoint, definitely has helped in just keeping my head above water over here on the construction side.
And so you have, you were talking off camera, so you went into the military late, actually, much later than the typical person. You were in your early 30s, I think. I was
32 when I went to basic training. So I joke around, tell people I think I watched American Sniper one too many times and had to get in it. But I had a few friends that had been serving for a while, and it was always something I kind of had in the back of my mind as interested to do. Mm-hmm. Like I was telling you, though, I was also preoccupied with trying to chase money and chase the dollar and whatever success was that I understood at that point in time. And I hit a point where I was like, you know what, this isn't fulfilling for me, and I didn't feel like I was doing anything that was really adding any sort of value to the situation. I shared, there was an Albert Einstein quote that I liked, which was, I'd rather be remembered as a man of value than a man of success. Mm-hmm. And so I figured, in my mind, what better way than to try to serve the country and give back in that sense, and kind of answer a little birdie that I had chirping on my ear for a while, and pulled the trigger, no pun intended, and went for it. So. And
you go into the Army?
I did. Yeah, left for basic training and ended up went through all the basic training stuff, officer candidate school, finished that. Eventually found my way into aviation and left for flight school and finished that. And then once I was done with flight school, ended up down here in Florida.
Mm. And you flying Black Hawks? Did you spend time in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I was in Iraq. Yeah, did a deployment over there. Spent some time flying around, seeing the sights, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you had told me how you had buddies who went in, and you had this draw to go because you wanted to see for yourself. What was the experience like? And was there anything that was shocking to you? Like, you clearly had some kind of a pull to go there. Like I said, you wanted to see for yourself. Like, what surprised you when you got over there?
It's a year's time period, so there's so much stuff that you kind of take in and absorb, and I think there's a period of time there where you spend time being really bored sometimes. You're away from your family, you're like, man, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. And then you get other moments that get pretty exciting, for lack of a better way to put it. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, you got time with your boys, mm-hmm. time with the people that you're deployed with. I think one of the interesting things, though, was it was always interesting to see, things that I was there involved with and doing, and then seeing what was reported back here and the perception of things, and how that kind of, where there was some crossover and things that were similar, and there was also stuff where you're like, wait a second, that does not line up with what I just watched and witnessed, you know. So some of that was kind of eye-opening in that sense. But overall, it was it was definitely a maturing season in a lot of ways, which sounds weird to be having a maturing season at that phase.
Sure.
But it was also really eye-opening on how to work with people in stressful situations, you know, and then how to cope with it and manage it on your own to a degree.
Did you feel like discipline was lacking in your life and the military gave it to you, or were you always like a motivated, disciplined person?
I think I've always been pretty motivated and disciplined. It wasn't really a lack of discipline for me. It really, like I was telling you, is more a matter of I didn't want to look back in life and say, hey, I wish I'd have done something. You know, there's what's the saying? It's basically, you know, you don't experience failure until you quit. So for me, it was one of those things like I never really want to look back and say, oh, should I have done it? Could I have done it? Could I have done it? And then kind of have that looming question. I figured for me, it was more, let's just go and let's give back and let's just see what happens, you know? So I don't know. It's a tough one. It's one of those things sometimes you just got to put one foot in front of the other and go with it. But
I have some dumb questions about flying. So you're a Black Hawk pilot, and you still do fly Black Hawks today. How much time are you spending before you get in by yourself in the cockpit flying on a mission? Like I'm sure there's a simulator probably, but like everything in the military, but learn best by doing it probably. So like what is like the training leading up to now you're in the cockpit?
So basically everybody goes to flight school. You start off in flight school, you're learning the basics, you're learning the systems, you're learning what the helicopter is all about, what it does. It's a lot like when you're going to driver's education, you figure out but a lot more in depth, let's put it that way, you know, how the car works, what you do, et cetera. And then you get a chance to go in some simulators and kind of feel it out a little bit. Pretty quickly after that, you're tossed straight into the training helicopter and you just figure it out. You always have an instructor pilot with you. So they're going to help give you the guidance and really basically help you not kill yourself initially. And then after that, it's really just a matter of time building. You leave flight school usually around I want to say it's around 150 hours or something like that, give or take. But a lot of the learning doesn't happen until you get to your unit and you start actually operating that helicopter, learning tactics, learning how to fly, more mission-oriented type flying. You're never really on your own. You've always got somebody else in the cockpit with you.
Okay.
But they do differentiate between, you know, a pilot and then a pilot in command. And a lot of that is just a matter of maturing in the cockpit, decision making, getting yourself ahead of the aircraft to anticipate things that are coming down the pipe, really having an idea of what's going to happen before it happens. And that's the key, because as soon as you start getting behind, as we call it, hanging off the stabulator, that's when you're just playing catch up, and usually that's where a lot of things go down.
Have you ever been in a crash?
Fortunately, no. Fortunately, no.
Nice.
Yeah.
What makes a great pilot?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's a matter of discipline, a matter of decision making, maturity in decision making, and also somebody who's capable of creating a quick, cohesive crew that's able to make everybody in that cockpit, in that helicopter, feel comfortable with what you're doing and keeps everybody involved and driven and mission-oriented. It's easy to get distracted by a lot of things when you're in the air. And there's times and places to do some sightseeing here and there occasionally, right? But when you are focused on an objective, you need to make sure that not only you, but your whole crew is there. The other side of it, I think, is a matter of planning. That's a huge portion. The flying part usually is not the more complicated part. It's the planning portion of things, and being able to not only have your initial plan that's anticipating things that could go wrong in the process, but also having several other courses of action to follow. because usually the first plan doesn't always pan out.
How long? What's the typical planning process? Like, is it typically, a week or 2 weeks of a plan for a certain mission, or like when you're in combat, it's like, hey, we're going to execute this mission in 2 days' time, and so there's the kind of a mad rush to plan. Like, what would be? And I'm sure maybe it's not necessarily a typical, but in your experience,
yeah, it definitely varies, right? I mean, depending on what that mission is really going to dictate how much time you spend on it. Mm-hmm. You were talking about the whole Bin Laden raid.
Right. I'm fascinated by the Bin Laden mission.
Yeah, so that was not a mission I was involved with. Those are some highly skilled individuals that ran that the Special Operations Aviation Regiment that pulled that one out. But that's weeks, if not months plus, and more of planning that's going in. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a year-long operation, especially just the intelligence that goes into the gathering to get all that stuff together. So you've got something as extreme as that, all the way down to, all right, well, let's go out and do a training iteration, where you might show up a couple hours ahead of time, but you're probably looking at weather before, earlier in the morning or the day of, or the day before, to get an idea of, all right, where are we going to go? What's going to support the training plan that we have to do? Mm-hmm. You're looking at who your crew is, what training support they're going to need, and then you're building in all of your stops and what you're going to do at the locations. Mm-hmm. And that might be a couple hours beforehand before you get up and out. Mm-hmm. In country, it's totally different. You might be part of a medevac operation where you're going to have a lot of upfront coordination, intel information given, but when you're dropped a 9-line, it's okay. You're getting, your grid coordinates, your frequencies, who you're talking to, and you're getting ready to run. You got one pilot going off to get the helicopter going, and then you're going in, getting the details, and that's pretty fast. But there's always been briefs prior, so you're kind of on standby with a preloaded mindset of what to anticipate in the general area. But some of that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really. Sometimes it's not until you get there that you really figure out what you're dealing with. And that's been a lot of the old stuff. A lot of, we're moving into I could go for hours on this thing. We're going into a different type of training iterations now, but that'd be the meat and potatoes of that.
Yeah, I could ask a lot more questions. And we could do a full, however long. But one last thing about the military, because I think there is, it's maybe topical. Do you think, is there a difference in leadership in the military today than 10, 15 years ago? I think we talk a lot about, but there's like a narrative about, the younger generation being a little softer, I guess, let's say. And it seems like there's a lot more discussion around, leadership styles need to be different today. Is leadership different in the military than it's been, or is it kind of the similar, no nonsense, really, really high standards? We don't tolerate anything other than this.
It's, that's a unique question, because I think there's leadership, and then there's positions of authority. And I think that there's a very big difference between that. I think that good leadership 10 years ago would follow what good leadership these days would be. It really doesn't matter who you're dealing with, right? Mm-hmm. How do you motivate somebody? Mm-hmm. How do you help draw the best out of them? How do you facilitate them achieving what's needed for the common goal, right? So There's good leadership and bad leadership that's going to exist no matter what, no matter when. Mm-hmm. It kind of covers all timelines. I think there's difference in people, individuals, and how they operate within their individual positions of authority. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be an individual thing, right? I think that how well they do that will determine on how well they are versed in their ability to lead and their leadership characteristics. Mm-hmm. So has it changed in the military? Maybe, but I think that that's really just a matter of who the individual is at any given point in time. And I think it's important for people to realize that not only are you able to be led or sometimes you have to answer to folks, right, and be led by them. But leadership's a two-way street. It really is something that you can also lead from whatever position you're in. You can influence people above you, and you can provide insight so that they can do their job better. And at the end of the day, it's really a collective effort, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, yes and no.
Okay. So, and you're still in the reserves today?
I am, yeah.
So what is that time commitment?
It's a lot more than I thought it would be. So on the aviation side, typically for a lot of folks, it's the way many understand it is 1 weekend a year, 2 weeks or 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. It's a lot different for aviators. I like to use kind of analogy of it'd be like a doctor only practicing medicine once a month and 2 weeks out of the year. It's a skill set that if you're not out and using it and honing it, it can deteriorate. And that's one of those skill sets that it's not like you're only at risk if you're overseas or deployed or in combat. Just flying in the local airspace can be risky depending on the circumstance. So I'm usually out at least once a week. I'll coordinate my schedule, get everything tightened up and working at work. And then I usually will go in the afternoons or evenings and go fly for 3-4 hours, something like that, into the night under NVGs, and then we'll come back, and then I'll get back to work the next day, and then usually the following week it's still on. And then we'll have weekends, and we'll go out and we'll do more collective training as a unit when we got more people there. So it's a balance.
Sure.
It's a balance, but it's it's kind of like when you get used to something, it's just kind of normal. I guess.
It's habit.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So how do you find your way in the road construction business with Turtle?
Man, if you'd asked me years ago what I would be doing at this point in time, there's no way I would even thought I'd be doing this. I had a buddy of mine that when I was full time in the military, we just hung out as friends, and we were just goofing off, and we ended up, he invited me out to a clay shoot one time, so I started asking him what he did and how that, and I knew he was in road construction, and so I started asking about project management, because I've been an operations officer for a period of time that I've been there as well, doing the military thing as well. And he started explaining the job as a project manager or a PM, and there was so much correlation to what I've been doing on the military side in terms of, okay, if you've got to accomplish something within a timeline and you need X number of resources there, how do you back plan to figure out how to execute that, Right. And so the more he explained it, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So we sat down one time and he goes, hey, listen, when you're ever at a point that you're thinking about maybe stopping doing the military full time, give me a call. So I said, okay. So I called him up one time, came back from deployment, and I thought, you know what, maybe this is time for me to blend my life, kind of do a little civilian life stuff and do a little of the military thing, and called him up, and he said, yeah, let's sit down and talk. And so I got in from base level. I worked for a few weeks on an asphalt crew, and then a couple weeks on a concrete crew, and eventually started helping out as a superintendent on a few jobs, and then became a project manager on that. But the key to all of it really was, and again, it goes back to the same thing on the military side, it's the team element and the people that I was fortunate enough to learn from, and to also for them to invest the time into me to kind of teach me the new language. I feel like there's a lot of crossover. It was just learning a different language.
Sure. So Turtle is very well respected within the industry. How long has Turtle been in road construction doing asphalt maintenance work? Longer
than you and I have been alive, man. Right. The Turtle actually started as a bridge building company up in the Northeast. They ended up in the process of doing, it was Turtle Structures. In the process of doing the bridge building, they would have to fix the approaches to the bridges. And this was back in the 70s that this was going on. And so they ended up, at the time, they would use excavators and pull out the asphalt. Well, the asphalt would get super thick in different places. In the 70s, it was also when the oil embargo was going on. So I'm sure you've heard of, the older generation talking about sitting in gas pumps and trying to fill their tanks.
Sure.
Well, obviously that impacts more than just vehicles. And so the cost of asphalt was pretty high. And so to pull out all those chunks and then throw them away and then backfill it with the additional asphalt got expensive.
Right.
So they found a way to, that's when the first milling machine kind of got introduced, at least in that sense, and they were able to then mill out a couple inches only and create a new tie into the approaches of these bridge decks.
Interesting. So it was a way to recycle old as opposed to always having to use new asphalt.
Recycle and prevent having to use asphalt because it obviously saved money.
Right.
So they took that concept and basically kept moving further south all the way until they ended up down here in St. Pete, and that's where and then that's how Turtle got going down in this area. And they actually still, I believe, helped write some of the spec for some of the asphalt milling when it came to those approaches and stuff. Yeah.
Where in the Northeast? You say Northeast, right?
Boston area,
Oh,
Massachusetts.
no way.
Yeah.
Okay. And just kept migrating further south because there's more and more work.
Kept coming further south, and it was one of these, again, like, a new cost-saving technology to utilize. And then in the process, they found, okay, well, hey, we have other the ability to use, instead of just pulling out these big chunks of asphalt, they have the ability to use these fine milling. So now there's cost savings in terms of alleyways or things that they can use the millings to lay down. Plus, millings, a lot of people don't know, but asphalt's one of the most highly recycled product, or not element, but product in the world.
Interesting. So, and you said that kind of coincided, the timing coincided with like the first milling machine being built and manufactured?
From what I understand, again, this was before I was around, but
I got
the
you.
way I understand
what was the brand
of
who had the first mill?
So it was a Galleon, what was it? It was like a Galleon 4-year. Now someone's going to beat me up for not remembering this exact model, but it was an old Galleon. We actually still have it sitting in the yard. It's this memorabilia piece that's back there. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. It basically was a grading machine, but instead of a blade had a milling head on there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so like that's the core focus of Turtle's business today, right? Is milling.
So yes, that is a big portion of it is asphalt milling, roadway milling. We do have another division within Turtle, or a couple other divisions. So back in, I think it was like 2018, Turtle ended up merging with another company, and we were able to incorporate a few other things. So we have a guardrail division. We've also got a mowing division, and then we've got a asphalt maintenance division as well. So they'll go out and actually do mill out an area, pave it back, all the MOT, all the striping, everything else that gets involved with that. Yeah.
Typically, how deep do you mill? Like how deep do you go to tear up the asphalt?
It all varies. It all varies based off of the needs of the job. So usually the engineers will determine if stuff's coming out, how much of it, and a lot of that just depends on how much actually there. Or if they're trying to profile it to put new asphalt on top, or if if the roadway's just been degraded over time and they just need to fix the top layer, you might only mill out an inch and a half, 2-3 inches. There's other times you're going much deeper, 8, 9, 10, 12 inches deep sometimes. And it really just depends upon what's trying to be accomplished. Usually you'll hit it in different lifts. Everybody, like I was telling you, the millings it's kind of like black gold out there now.
Sure.
Because they use that to make new asphalt. And so usually you'll take a pass just to get all the millings out, and then from there you start getting into the lime rock or the base material. And
So
you get
then,
that out
yeah.
as
So
well.
then, what is the process there? So you mill it, you tear up the old through, and then you have like a conveyor that puts it into it. Like, what is that process?
So typically what will happen is you'll get out on a job site. Well, we'll just take a general scenario here, right? You'll get onto a job site. Your MOT will go up. They'll go ahead and cordon off the lane, and then from there you drop the mill in, and you're cutting 2 inches for however far. You'll cut that 2 inches out. That you got a drum that's got a bunch of teeth in there, and the teeth will essentially chop all that material out. It then gets spun up into the drum, dropped into a conveyor belt. That conveyor belt shoots out the front of the machine and into a dump truck, and the machine is continually moving forward as it goes, and you're basically just tearing out a pathway of material. And then what'll happen is you'll come back and you'll take out the rest. Once it's all there, it's empty, then you can have a paver come through, and then they'll just put it straight back. They'll tack it and put it back and go from there.
And Turtle does not pave, correct?
We do have a division that does some paving.
Oh, you do?
yes,
Okay.
Yeah. It's focused on a lot of like repair work and maintenance type projects that's there. But the nice part, this industry's it's huge, but it's small, right?
Sure.
So there's a lot of times where there's projects going on here, projects going on there. And one of the things that's really kept Turtle around for as long as it's been has just been the relationships. And so we're always trying to be available to help, just as other companies are trying to help each other as well. And you might have a company that doesn't, they need to get on a job. They don't have enough, another paving crew that's able to do that. And so we've been called occasionally to help out with things here and there. And
Who's your customer?
we work with basically all the big builders that are out there right now. A lot of the asphalt companies. So, I mean, you name it, we're pretty much operating with them right now.
And so they hire you. You guys are primarily come in and mill. Do you have to manage a project, or you just you come in, you do your thing? You don't have to worry about managing all these other subs on a road project?
Typically, no, but it does depend. We do have a couple contracts where we do manage more than just running the mills. But the other jobs, let's say, that they've got utility work and what would you call it, pipe and all the other different elements of the job site. We're not always operating to that level. Usually those aren't the contracts that we're typically working on, but we will be a portion of a support subcontract to those companies.
And you have, would you call them crews? Like, hey, we have 15 milling crews. Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay. How many mills do you have then?
We're running 11, 12 mills right now.
Okay.
We've got usually about, we were able to flex up and flex down on our crews because there's different times that you get busy and you get slower, so we're usually running around 9 to 10 crews, give or take. But it all really just depends on the demand at that any given point in time.
And then what's your footprint today? Is it all of Florida? Does it go outside of Florida?
Usually we're within the greater Tampa Bay area, but we do get all the way up north towards Citrus County in some scenarios, and we'll go down towards Manatee, Polk County. We've done jobs further out east as well. As far as where our major footprint is, though, is you probably just draw about a 100-mile radius around Tampa Bay, and that's where
Still
we're doing
plenty of roads
majority.
to be built, huh?
Oh yeah. There's Florida road building is growing about as fast as the number of people coming into the state.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's how long is your typical, like, your portion of a road project?
It all depends. We've had jobs that are months long. We've had you get other jobs that you're in and out within an hour or two. And a lot of it just depends on what's going on. We will have some jobs where it's just a quick repair, and you sometimes we joke around and say sometimes it takes more time to get there,
right,
and unload and get everything done than to actually do the milling portion of things. Other jobs we're out there, we'll drop one mill, sometimes two mills out on a roadway, and we're there for weeks and months on end, just every night, every day, cutting.
And what are your day-to-day responsibilities then as VP of Ops for Turtle?
Man, try to keep up with everybody else,
Sure.
A lot of the stuff that I get focused on is we're always looking at managing our costs and trying to ensure that we're operating efficiently so that we can be providing as fair of a resource to our customers. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is really just in trying to find opportunities to develop the people that are within the company that mm-hmm. we've got here, to help train them, to get them to operate as well as they possibly can, mm-hmm. So that, again, we can give the most quality product to our customers. And also to try to manage and maintain the morale as much as best we can as well. It's a huge thing. We want people that are, when they come to work, they're happy to be here. Mm-hmm. So aside from kind of just the overarching, it's also going out and talking to people and meeting with different customers as well, trying to understand their challenges. I can't help them if I don't really understand what they're.
Okay, so you're customer facing as well as focus on helping to train and manage the day-to-day employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, construction is one of those things that you always get unforeseen circumstances that come up. So I'm a big proponent of just open communication. Hey, listen, bad news doesn't get better with time. Mm-hmm. So, hey, here's something that came down the pipe. This was an issue. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, listen, a machine broke. Giving you a heads up. We'll make it right type deal.
What was so you can already see like the tie from military to what you do today. I mean, it's pretty clear. What was the biggest learning curve for you when you got in the industry? I mean, it's clear you had like the leadership training. It's funny when you describe how when you talk to your friends, like what he described was going on, it seemed like such a great fit for what your experience was. What did you have to pick up on? What did you have to learn the most, like getting into this job?
I think the biggest portion of it was, there's the language barrier, and not language just in the actual verbiage of things.
Rap.
Sure, right, yeah.
Terms, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's that side of it. But it's also just understanding the big picture of the project and how it all comes together, mm-hmm. how all the different pieces flow from once you estimate and bid a project to the point that you're actually closing it out, and hitting punch lists. A lot of it was just building some experience, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. A framework that I could apply just general knowledge to. Mm-hmm. It started off just kind of rote memorization of information, and then eventually moves into application and understanding, so that you can then enact whatever it is that you're trying to do.
I guess I would imagine so much of that learning is you have to learn what the common things are that go wrong. Right, like it's this is something that I always am fascinated by, because we have a young company, and so we try different stuff, and you can sit there like, oh God, that didn't work. So and it influences so many of our decisions going forward. Like what are the typical things that go wrong on road projects? Like what are the things that keep you up at night?
Oh, man, there's always an unforeseen thing. It's interesting what you say, though, in terms of learning and lessons learned and stuff. So, I had told you, being afraid to fail at something is never going to get you anywhere. You really don't fail until you quit. Yeah. But a lot of the times we operate from the standpoint of we've all been brought up in school where you learn a lesson and then you take a test and then you determine if you passed or failed.
Right.
The reality is in life, it's the complete opposite. You're given a test in life, mm-hmm. and then you either learn a lesson on what you did right or didn't do right, and then you can adjust and move forward.
Right.
So a lot of it applies to the same thing, just in construction building. You're going to go in with your best foot forward, and based off of what you believe to be the facts and what you're anticipating, you go in with a plan. There's always going to be some sort of unforeseen thing, buried metal, buried manholes, somebody, an equipment broke, a hydraulic line busted, whatever it might be. and you're going to have to figure, okay, well, how do I adapt off that? How do you change that? Man, the list is so vast in terms of the things that could potentially go wrong.
Right.
I think the primary thing that's important, though, is equipment is equipment. Rocks are rocks, metal's metal. The important thing for us is that the people are safe in the process. It's a dangerous industry. I mean,
Sure.
roadway construction is extremely dangerous. I've been on roads where you're standing, a foot and a half away from live traffic.
Jesus.
So I think as long as the failures are happening, with those unforeseen things, we can live another day to go and work through that. But the primary importance is really just ensuring the safety of our crews.
Are most of your jobs at night?
It's 50. It depends. A lot of the DOT work is because that is just the nature of you want to be on that road for that same reason when there's less traffic, less impact to the moving public.
Has there been a rise of injuries on job sites with everybody's so distracted these days. Like once cell phones hit cars and everybody, it is kind of frightening. Like when I drive, like in a normal day, and you can just like look over at cars and like, I don't know, 75% of people seem to be on phones. Like, has there been an increase in injuries, fatalities in your guys with your labor force since like over that period of time?
We fortunately, yes, there have been injuries. I don't know the data, to be honest with you, in terms of if there's what the trend is.
Yeah.
I treat it like there's always like it's always
there's no
potentially getting
acceptable
worse.
amount of injury,
exactly.
right?
What's 1, what's 10.
Yeah.
One is still as tragic as.
I'm just curious
10.
if there's been a spike, because it seems that people are paying less and less attention.
There's definitely high risk for it. Plus, you get a lot of people you get a lot more people coming into the state. You also get a lot of seasonal traffic that comes into the state. And one of the things that gets tricky with that is familiarity, right? So anytime you're not familiar, sure, I think logic would lend itself to say that there's potentially a higher threat there. So I think you could reasonably make that argument. But I'd be curious to see if the data actually lines up. I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Have you had any injuries or fatalities at Turtle?
There have been some circumstances that people have been injured over the time. Yeah. I think it's never acceptable. And the sad part is that sometimes you can be doing everything right and there's still something that goes down. We have had scenarios. We've had road closures up. We've had lights. We've had attenuator trucks. The whole 9 yards out there. And you get one person who's had a few too many that night, and the flashing light creates that kind of deer in the headlight approach, and all of a sudden they steer towards it, and yeah.
I've never seen anything like in this area. Yeah, it's become far too common for people to enter a highway going the wrong way. It's crazy in the Tampa region. Like you see people getting on 275 the wrong way and driving.
It's stupidly impressive. One of the things, though, I will say this: there's been a lot of attention recently. So we're talking a lot of physical threats that's been happening to construction workers, people in the industry. But there's been a big increase, and maybe not even an increase, but a brighter light that's recently been shined on just the mental health within the industry as well. Vince Affelli, who's the president of Ajax, he's been spending a lot of time really trying to educate people on that. I know Vince pretty well, and so it's been really eye-opening for, I think, a lot of people that have realized that the mental health crisis that's happening within the construction industry is as drastic as it is. And I think it's probably very similar to what happens in the military. You get an environment where big, tough, gruff people, and folks don't always talk about stuff, So the threats aren't always physical out there,
I've always been impressed by Florida roads. We have really good, very smooth roads. Like when you travel, like I go back to the Northeast a bunch because I'm from Philadelphia, and not nearly as high quality of roads. Like, what makes Florida roads such high quality?
Turtle milling. Now, there's a lot. So, man, again, there's probably 1,000 different things as well. I know that the infrastructure has been a big focus for Florida. It's obviously one of the fastest growing states.
So it's something that's government driven, actually, for once.
There's a lot of funding that goes into it, yeah, without a doubt. You know, there's a big initiative that's been pushed for new road building that's going on. There's also, you know, legislation that monitors what the quality of the roads are, and once you hit a certain quality level, there's a push to get that replaced and fixed. It's a big drive when it comes to just the overall general safety of the moving public. So.
Do you see what I mean, maybe my observation is wrong, but I feel like Florida roads are much higher quality than other places that I visit. Is that?
I would say, I'm trying to think here in terms of, you know, different places I've been driving. Yeah, it's a pretty fair assessment. A lot of the roads are very good. I can't speak to the quality of the road builders in other places. I can definitely say that we've got a lot of companies here that pride themselves on the quality of the roads that are built. A lot of the specs that the FDOT put together are to ensure that, you know. I've only been in the road building industry here in Florida. I don't know what the similarities are or are not in some of the other states. What I can tell you is that there's a lot of pride, a lot of energy and effort that's put into ensuring that the roads are as quality as they can be, just in the way that the specs are written.
And then the DOT inspects the road after it's built, right? And you know, sometimes it might not be to that spec, and you have to tear it up and redo it.
You got to fix it. Yep. So there's a lot of payoff to doing it right the first time, without a doubt. Because for exactly the reason that you said, the quality is important.
Interesting. How long should like a roadway last?
Again, it's a good question. It all depends on the type of road that you're talking about. You know, I'll be the first to admit, when it comes into the technical nuances of asphalt and rocks and AC mixtures and this, that, and the other, I am not the leading expert on that.
Okay.
There are some very impressive people that work in different mix designs and in that whole realm, the science realm of it, that have created different mix designs for different types of roads, and a lot of it's based off of the type, how much weight is going over that road, how much traffic is going over that road, you know. And I think that one of the things that they'll do is they'll try to use different materials for different purposes. I've seen different intersections that have been built, had all the asphalt torn out. And they'll go ahead and put back in concrete just because of the wear factor on it. Again, like I said, I'm not an engineer.
What's the benefit of going to concrete as opposed to asphalt?
The way I've always understood the benefit of concrete is just the wear factor. It's harder, it doesn't slide as much. But then again, you got high polymer roads that people will use for heavier traffic that's going on. You know, one of the things I know with Florida in terms of using concrete on roads is because of the water table, sometimes absorption is a factor there. So they'll put an asphalt mat below the concrete to try to do it. Again, I always joke about, you know, I fly the helicopters. I didn't build them. I guess I help build the roads. I don't design them.
What requires more ongoing maintenance, a helicopter or a milling machine?
There's a ton of crossover on that too, man. I mean, you got two machines with a bunch of moving parts, you know. I think something the military has done very well is establish a maintenance program and plan to help ensure that, you know, unlike a milling machine, you can't just pull over. But that's something that I know a lot of companies, ourselves included, do is equipment is the lifeblood of your company. And if you're not taking care of it, then you're not going to be able to do the work. So, you know, we've got different inspections that got to be done, and weeklies and daily inspections, and all of that. Still, not only does it go back to maintaining the equipment, but again, goes back to maintaining the safety of your crews.
Have there been advancements in technology with the equipment, like with the milling machines that you've seen in the last 5-10 years that help you guys do the job better and faster?
Yeah, without a doubt. I know that just the general milling machine equipment, there's a lot more electronics on milling machines now than there has been. I think there's a lot more electronics on most machines now than there has been.
Not everybody's psyched about that.
There's always going to be the old timer, but I'll tell you this, we've had some guys that have been very much the proponent of kind of the original machines, and I like this. It's, I know how it works. I can run it. And they've gotten into some of our newer machines that we've purchased and started using, and their tune has changed. They realize that a lot of the electronics and technology that's in there is actually pretty helpful for the process. That's just one side of the machines. The whole other thing too is GPS has become a much more prominent tool when it comes to road building as well. And there's all different types, but the ability to scan a road, know where the road's at, and then put back to a specific elevation a roadway, or to cut out to a certain elevation a roadway, or change slope, etc., just based off of where the GPS has you at any given point in time.
So before, they would have to know, hey, we're going 6 inches, we're going 9 inches here.
Yeah, you're running lines, you're doing all sorts of just crazy measurement, whereas in some of these scenarios, you can actually cut to a specific place and depth based off of where you are geographically referenced off some satellite.
So it's removed a lot of that maybe operator error possibility.
Sure, yeah, and it helps ensure that you're getting an accurate cut at a given place and time. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
and then I'm guessing there have been advancements in, like you said, that there's a lot of scientists who are coming up with different mixtures for road bases. You've seen that too as well, where there's new products in the last 5-10 years where it'll lead to a longer lasting road. Is that?
Definitely. At least that's what they tell me. Like I said, I'm not the engineer, but we're working on a job right now with a builder that's doing a big high poly mix on a roadway. There's a lot of moving pieces that go into just manufacturing that, because there's a lot for quality control purposes. There's been different mix designs that have been set up for concrete, and usually it's well, at least in my experience, it was for how quickly it can set as well, and then what the strength is. Man, I'm sure all the engineers are gonna be laughing at me right now. I'm trying to talk their language, but what I can say is there's definitely been a lot of changes in the science behind things, and I think it's just a testament to what's happening in all fields.
Yeah, just experimenting, right?
People are trying new things, looking for new ways of trying to make things better.
One of the things that I like to ask everybody is about the labor shortage. It's no secret that the industry, we need to recruit more people into it. What are your thoughts on that? And you've kind of highlighted how there's just such a natural between military and the construction. Do companies is there a active recruiting effort? Does there need to be more done to help educate people in the military, like, hey, when you're ready to transition to civilian life, this is a career and an industry that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of carryover. Yeah,
without a doubt. I think the labor challenge it's felt across the board. You've got a lot of people that have been in the industry that are either retiring or getting out, and you're trying to find people to backfill, to come in and take their spots. But when you're dealing with skilled labor, you don't just go find the person that's got skilled labor who's never done it before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the things, I was reading a book. I'm blanking on the title, but it's a book on how the special forces look for and retain talent. And their whole thing is in the same concept. You can't go out and just find an operator. You have to train an operator.
Right.
Well, how do you do that? You got to look for certain key characteristics that are common, and they've perfected that process for their craft. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really the key at the end of the day for us now. That's something that we're adopting. Mm-hmm. At least when it comes to looking for new people, is we'll always be interested in talking to somebody who's got experience.
Sure.
But I'm also interested more so in who's got the characteristics, who's got
the raw material
that you can then train and teach. Mm-hmm. The drive, the things you can't teach. I'm going to get up in the morning and be where I need to be. If something's wrong, I'm going to share that information, mm-hmm. not because I'm trying to, I'm not afraid to be wrong. I'm afraid to make the best effort.
Sure. I think there's a big difference. Maybe it's not discussed in these terms, but what you're talking about is recruiting. And I think many companies and businesses fall into the trap of, well, we only hire who comes to us. Like, they have to show us the initiative.
Sure.
And those are two very different things.
They are. And the other thing too, though, that really has been, and I think this is the key for not only now, but going forward in this shortage. You're not going to replace a shortage overnight. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We have a lot of very talented people that already work for us. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a matter of, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how can we train and develop the people that show those aptitudes mm-hmm. and desires to get to the next level in their career mm-hmm. within our organization. So it's all about professional development internally. So we have conversations when we're doing reviews of people. What do you want to do? Mm-hmm. Are you happy with what you're doing? Mm-hmm. Look, this is what I think you'd be great at doing. Does that line up with what you want to do? It does? Cool. All right, this is what we need to do to get from step A to step B to step C and mm-hmm. get you to that location. So training, development is huge. We really try to implement that with everybody's work. I would much rather move somebody up into a new position that's been working for us than try to just fill it from the outside mm-hmm. if I'm able to.
Sure.
And I think that's what gives a lot of growth opportunity for the people that work for us.
Yeah. What is like the future goal or vision for Turtle? Like what in 5-10 years from now, what's that? What do you guys talk about internally?
I think still be in the business. We're still going to be doing what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. I'd like to see a bigger footprint. Mm-hmm. I'd like to be able to facilitate the needs of more people, more customers. I think when it comes down to roadway building, like we talked about, it's a growing industry. Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of business that's out there, and there's a lot of people that are involved. Mm-hmm. I'd like to have a bigger footprint and be more involved in that. I'd like to incorporate an element of automation into our process. I haven't quite figured out mm-hmm. the perfect way to do it, because a conversation is still extremely valuable in this industry. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to somebody who's calling in and looking for, hey, either I'm looking for a quote on this, or hey, I'm looking, to try to get on the schedule. Trying to figure out a way to automate some of that, so it can cut down on some of the time spent that we're having to do some of those administrative things mm-hmm. that we can then focus on really fine tuning and honing into ensuring that there's no hiccups in minimizing the unforeseen things that take place out there. Mm-hmm. I know AI is a big focus right now.
Buzzword, yes.
It's a big buzzword. Yep. I haven't figured out where it fits in our business model yet, mm-hmm. but I would like to, because
sure.
it's coming.
Yeah.
So if I can figure that out sooner than later, that would be a big thing. Mm. And I think that at the end of the day, that we're all still here and helping out the customers and just in a bigger footprint.
Do you work for customers today, like some of these developers who have jobs in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, other areas? Is that so? There could be already a natural
for other customers that are in those areas. Yeah, there's people that are operating out of that, but again, I think where I'm saying growing too, it's not only just numbers of people, but hubs.
Okay.
Right? So if I could create a location in a different area that I can operate out of, it's going to expand my footprint.
Very cool.
So that would definitely be a big goal of ours, and if we can pick up more work that way, then great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and giving your time and chatting for a little bit. It was pretty interesting to learn more in depth about, road construction.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. Loved being here. It was great chatting with you guys, and we'll be around, so anything I can do to help.